The fall after the funeral, the rain poured endlessly the day Maria buried her husband, Zaid. It was as if the sky mourned with her, heavy and relentless. Her black dupatta clung to her soaked hair as she held her children's hands. Nina, Ayan and 5-year-old Layla, both too young to understand the finality of a funeral. Zaid's death had been sudden, a heart attack at just 38. One moment they were laughing over chai. The next she was screaming for an ambulance. In that blink, everything changed. Maria had always been a quiet strength. A woman who stayed in the background, while Zaid managed the world outside. Their life was modest but full of love. Zaid worked at a small car workshop, and though money was tight, it was enough to eat, pay rent, and keep their children in school. But now, she was alone. After the funeral, she looked around her husband's family home, where they had moved years ago to care for his aging parents. His mother, Tasneem Begum, sat on the sofa with pursed lips, her arms crossed, while her 2 sons, Zaid's younger brother, stood quietly beside her. "Bobby," one of them said coldly, "we need to talk." Maria knew the tone. Her heart dropped. "You've always been welcome here because of Bai. Now that he's gone, things have changed." Maria clutched Layla tighter. "I have nowhere else to go." Tasneem Begum finally spoke, her voice sharp as a blade. "You think this house is yours? Zaid never put your name on anything. This is my son's house, not yours. And now, he's not here to argue. But we are your blood," Maria said quietly, tears threatening to fall. "You're not," Tasneem snapped. "My blood died with Zaid." The next morning, Maria and her children were gone. One small suitcase and a plastic bag were all she could carry. She had no job, no savings, and no one to call. Her own family had cut her off years ago when she married Zaid against their will. She thought love would be enough. With trembling hands, she reached into her purse and counted the last of her money hours. 2,800. Not enough for rent. Barely enough for food. She found a temporary shelter for women in Lahore's outskirts, a place with peeling walls and a curfew, but it was safe. For now. Days blurred into weeks. She applied everywhere: factories, cleaning jobs, even tried to sell her wedding bangles for some cash. But no one wanted a widow with 2 kids and no skills. Ayan missed school. Layla asked, every night when they would go home. One evening, after being turned away from yet another job, Maria sat on a park bench, holding back tears. Her children played nearby, trying to chase a cat. Her stomach ached from hunger. But she smiled for them. That's when he appeared. A tall man in a black coat, with kind eyes and an umbrella, stopped in front of her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you all right?" She looked up, startled. "Yes, ... I mean, no, just tired." He looked at the children, then back at her. "I don't mean to intrude, but you look like you've been through a storm." Maria blinked. That's one way to put it. He sat on the bench, a respectful distance away. "My name is Saad." She hesitated. Maria, he repeated softly. "Sometimes, the storm brings us to places we're meant to be, even if it doesn't feel like it at first." She didn't know why, but something in his voice made her believe him. Even if just for a moment. Shelter in the rain. Maria wasn't the type to trust strangers easily, especially now with everything she'd lost. But something about Saad didn't feel dangerous. He wasn't overly sympathetic, nor did he try to offer fake comfort. He simply sat beside her, silent and patient, as the raindrops began to fall again. She stood quickly, worried. "Come on, kids, we need to find shelter." "I have a car," Saad said gently. "Let me drop you off." "Wherever you're going." Maria shook her head. "No, thank you, we'll manage." But then Layla started coughing. That deep, dry cough that Maria had heard for days now. She was running low on medicine. Low on food. Her daughter's eyes were tired. Saad noticed her hesitation. "Look," he said softly, pulling out his wallet. "I'm not offering charity, but I have a place nearby, a women's center, one help fund. They'll give you and your children a clean bed, food, and medical help. No one will ask questions. Just think of it as ... A pause. A safe stop." Maria bit her lip, torn. Ayan tugged on her sleeve. "Amy, please. Layla's cold." She nodded. Not for herself, but for her children. The building was simple from the outside but warm inside. Soft lighting, clean beds, smiling women at the reception desk. One of them, a middle-aged lady named Ruxan, greeted her with a warm "Assalamu alaikum," and gently led the children toward a small room, with a bed and toys. Maria stood there, awkward, unsure whether to run or collapse. Saad watched her carefully. You can rest tonight. Take a hot shower. There's food in the dining hall. If you don't want to stay beyond that, I understand. Why are you helping me? She asked finally, arms crossed. He smiled faintly. I've seen too many people suffer in silence. You looked like someone holding on by a thread. I've known that feeling myself. Maria didn't ask more, but his words stayed with her. That night, Maria wept quietly in the shower, the water masking her sobs. It was the first time she wasn't thinking of where they would sleep or how to feed her kids. Later, at dinner, Ion devoured the rice and chicken curry like he hadn't eaten in days. Layla laughed as another little girl handed her a doll. Maria just watched, stunned by the sudden change in their expressions. Hope she hadn't felt it in weeks. The next morning, she found Saad sitting in the center's small library, reading a book. I thought you left, she said. I don't live far. Just came to check on you. Maria hesitated, then sat across from him. It's a good place, quiet, safe. Thank you. He nodded. There's more. If you're interested. She frowned. More. I run a few training programs for women. Sewing, basic computer use, and even baking. Some of them earn enough to support their families now. If you want a fresh start, this could be it. Maria's eyes widened. You'd help me get work. I'd help you help yourself. That hit her harder than she expected. Zaid used to say something similar. I won't take handouts, she said firmly. Good, he replied with a grin. That's why this will work? Over the next few days, Maria started attending the sewing workshop. At first, her fingers fumbled. She hadn't stitched since her college days, but with time, she improved. The trainer, a kind widow herself, praised Maria's precision and patience. Ion and Layla settled into a daily routine: games, lessons, laughter. They looked healthier. Maria's shoulders slowly began to relax. And each evening, Saad would stop by. Sometimes he brought books for Ion. Sometimes mangoes for Layla. Sometimes just silence and tea for Maria. She didn't know what to make of him. Was he always this generous? Was he hiding something? Why her? But she didn't ask. Not yet. Whispers of the past. The sewing machine hummed gently as Maria guided a strip of floral fabric beneath the needle. Her hands moved with more confidence now, her stitches neater. It had only been 2 weeks, but she was already completing pillow covers and small bags for the center's shop. The satisfaction that came from her work was new. Not like cooking or cleaning for others, it was hers. Earned. That morning, Ruxana handed her a brown envelope. Your first earnings, she smiled. Rs 1,200 from the pillow sets you helped make. Maria stared at the envelope, speechless. Not because of the amount, but because for the first time in weeks, she'd earned something again. On her own, she placed the money inside her bag with trembling fingers, whispering a quiet shukriya, Allah. Later that afternoon, Saad arrived as usual, carrying a small box of mangoes and 2 old comic books. Ion beamed and ran to him, treating him like a beloved uncle now. Layla squealed and hugged his leg. Maria watched it all from a distance. Her heart warmed, but also tightened with worry. She met him in the courtyard later as the kids played. You've been too kind, she said softly. They're getting attached, and you? He asked, eyes meeting hers. Are you still unsure of me? She hesitated. You helped when no one else did. That's hard to forget. But you're still a stranger. Saad nodded. That's fair. He looked away, the air suddenly heavier. Maybe it's time I stopped being one. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. My sister, used to stay here, he said. 10 years ago. Maria frowned. She ran away from her abusive husband. I couldn't protect her then. I was too busy with my own life, my business, my travels. By the time I found her again, she was dying. Maria lowered her gaze. This center was her idea, Saad continued. Before she passed, she made me promise I'd build a place where women like her could find safety. Maria was silent for a long time. I'm sorry you lost her. He smiled faintly. You remind me of her. Strong, quiet, brave, she felt, her cheeks warm, unsure how to respond. That night, Maria sat with her children as they slept, watching their peaceful faces. Layla clutched her new stuffed bunny, a gift from the center. Ion had fallen asleep with the comic book in his hands. She thought of Zaid, of how much he would have loved this version of his children safe, fed, smiling again. He would have thanked Saad, Maybe even teased her about blushing when the man smiled at her. Maria laughed quietly to herself. Zayd always did say her face gave away everything, but the past always has a way of knocking. 3 days later, Tasnim Begum showed up at the center's front gate. Maria was helping in the kitchen when she heard the voice, that sharp, cold tone she knew all too well. "I want to see my grandchildren. Where are they? Where's that shameless girl?" Maria froze. She stepped out into the corridor and saw her mother-in-law standing like a storm face, pinched, eyes blazing, arms crossed. Ion stood behind her, uncertain and pale. Ruxana stepped in. "This is a protected facility. You can't raise your voice here. I raised that girl like a daughter," Tasnim snapped. "And now she's hiding my son's children." Maria stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "You threw us out. I begged you to let us stay. You called me nothing." Tasnim's nostrils flared. "You poisoned my son's mind. He gave you everything, and now you want more." "I want nothing from you," Maria said, her heart pounding. "Not your house, not your money, not your pity. Just leave us in peace. Those are my blood," Tasnim shouted, pointing at Ion and Layla. Saad appeared suddenly, standing between them, "And they are under this center's protection now. If you try to take them, I will get a court order against you." Tasnim looked at Saad, eyes narrowing. "Who are you to her?" Maria stepped forward. "Someone who saved us when you left us to die." Tasnim stared for a moment, then turned and stormed off, her heels echoing down the hall. Ion ran to Maria, hugging her tightly. "Are we going to be okay, Amy?" She looked down at him, her voice steady. "We already are, Beta." Roots of resilience. The confrontation with Tasnim Begum left Maria shaken, even though she had stood her ground. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every creak outside the room made her sit up, thinking her in-laws would come barging in, again to snatch the kids or shame her in front of everyone, but they didn't, and Saad made sure they wouldn't. The next morning, he returned to the center with legal documents. A restraining notice had been prepared through one of the lawyers associated with the center. "They won't bother you again," he said, handing her a copy. Maria clutched the paper, her hands trembling. "You didn't have to go this far." "I did," he replied simply. "Because now, you're not alone." As days turned into weeks, Maria began to find her rhythm. She was offered a paid role as an assistant in the sewing program, helping new women learn basic stitching and organizing materials. The first time she signed her name on a salary slip, a strange joy lit her face. It wasn't much, but it was earned, respectfully, dignified. She opened a small savings account under her own name. That night, she bought her children a small cake and 2 coloring books. "This is what it means to rebuild," she whispered, to herself, step by step. One afternoon, as Maria taught a new woman how to thread the bobbin, Layla burst into the sewing room holding a drawing. "Amy, I made this." She squealed. Maria smiled and took the picture. It was a crayon sketch of a small house with 3 people inside: Maria, Ion, and Layla, but right next to them stood a tall figure in a long coat with a smiling face. Maria's heart skipped. "Who's this?" she asked softly, already knowing. "Uncle Saad," Layla beamed. "He's our new angel." Maria felt something shift deep in her chest. The kids weren't just safe anymore, they were healing. Later that evening, she found Saad reading under the neem tree in the courtyard. He looked peaceful, as though he belonged in another era, always calm, always composed. "You've become a part of their world," she said, sitting beside him. "And what about yours?" he asked, without looking up. Maria hesitated. "That still confuses me." Saad chuckled. "I'm not asking for anything, Maria, just that you don't keep shutting the door I keep gently knocking on." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. The next day, Ruxana approached Maria with an idea. "We want to expand the center's income. Start an online shop. Sell handmade items, bags, cushion covers, embroidery work. You're one of our best. Would you consider leading the project?" Maria blinked. "Me? Lead?" Ruxana nodded. "You've shown patience, creativity, and kindness to others. That's what we need. SOD will sponsor the startup cost. You manage the women." Maria looked around at the center, at the walls that once felt like a cage but now felt like home. "I'll try," she said. That's all we ever needed to hear. The following weeks were a flurry of activity. Maria learned to use a basic laptop, started photographing the products, and created a small page on Facebook and Instagram to promote the center's work. Sales trickled in slowly. then steadily. Women, who once whispered their pain, now spoke excitedly about fabric combinations and pricing. The sewing room was filled with chatter and hope. Maria walked taller now, her steps filled with purpose. One evening, after reviewing some orders with Saad, she found herself watching him closely. "You've done so much for all of us," she said softly. "I promised my sister I'd make something good out of her pain," he replied. "Helping this center, helping you. It feels like redemption." Maria looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you ever think about starting over?" He turned to her. "Every single day. But not alone." Their eyes met. For the first time, she didn't look away. But just as hope began to blossom fully, a message arrived. One of the staff handed Maria a sealed letter. No sender name. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sentence. "You've been smiling too much for a widow." The color drained from her face. Who sent this? Her in-laws. Someone from her past. A stranger jealous of her rising confidence. Maria folded the note slowly, her hands shaking. She looked up at the center, at her children playing, at Saad helping unload sewing kits from the car. She had built a new world, but someone wanted to tear it down. Shadows returned. Maria stared at the note long after the sun had set. The words burned into her memory. "You've been smiling too much for a widow." It wasn't just a sentence. It was a threat, a warning, a reminder of the chains, she thought, she'd broken. She folded the note and slipped it into her dupatta, forcing her hands to stay steady. She didn't want to alarm the children or the others at the center. Not yet. But inside her, the fear she had fought so hard to silence came roaring back. That night, she barely slept. Every sound outside the window made her heart jump. She double-checked the locks, pulled her children closer, and watched the door like a hawk. The safety she'd started to feel was now under attack by something or someone unknown. The next morning, Saad noticed her pale face the moment he walked in. "Did something happen?" he asked gently. Maria hesitated, but then handed him the note without a word. His eyes scanned it, his jaw tightening. "Who gave this to you?" "It was passed to me through one of the younger girls. She said someone left it with her outside." "Did anyone see who?" She shook her head. Saad stood abruptly. "I'll speak to Ruxana. We need to tighten security. No more strangers near the gates. Cameras, even if temporary." Maria touched his arm. "Please, don't tell the children." He paused, his eyes softening. "I won't, but Maria, this is serious." She nodded. "I know. I don't want to live in fear again." "You won't," he promised. "Not on my watch." Over the next few days, Saad hired a local guard for the front gate, and Ruxana ensured that all visitors were recorded in a logbook. The staff were alert, but the note had already done its damage. Maria felt eyes on her, even when there were none. She second-guessed every knock, every unfamiliar voice. Even the sewing machine's hum couldn't drown out the rising anxiety in her chest. And then came the second note. This time, it was found tucked inside one of the cloth bundles in the sewing room. Same handwriting, same chilling tone. "Widows should mourn, not lead." Maria's knees nearly buckled. Saad called the police, but with no fingerprints or witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. Probably someone bitter or jealous, the officer had said. Maybe from her past life. Past life. That phrase haunted Maria. She hadn't lived a double life. She'd just tried to survive it. Ruxana gathered the center's women for a meeting, warning them about the threats, and asking them to report anything suspicious. A few murmurs spread, some scared, some angry, but Maria refused to let this break her. That evening, she gathered the sewing group. "We've come too far to be scared into silence," she told them. "I know some of you have lost more than I have, but we built this place together. And I won't let one coward with a pen ruin that." One of the women, a former acid attack survivor, stood up. "You gave us strength when we had none. Now it's our turn." The group applauded. Maria tried to smile through the tears. Saad stayed close in those days. He drove Maria to pick up fabric orders. He helped Ion fix a broken bicycle he found behind the center. He sat with Layla during dinner and made her laugh with silly stories. But one evening, as the children ran ahead, Maria turned to him with trembling lips. "What if they try to hurt my kids?" "They won't," he said without hesitation. "But you can't always be here, Saad." "What if I'm not just here to protect?" he interrupted softly. "I'm here to stay." Maria froze. "What do you mean?" He took a breath. "I mean, I've watched you build something from ashes. And somewhere along the way, I stopped helping out of duty. I started helping because I care. Deeply. She didn't speak. Her heart raced in her chest, and the words stuck in her throat. You don't have to say anything now, he added. Just know, I'll never let anyone hurt you again. But fate wasn't ready to rest. One evening, while returning from the market with some fabric rolls, Maria noticed a figure watching her from across the street, a man in a dark camise, eyes fixed, motionless. She quickly turned the corner, heart pounding. When she glanced back, he was gone. She reached the center in record time. Breathless. That night, she locked every door and window and sat awake till sunrise. The past had found her again, but this time, she wasn't the same helpless woman. This time, she had something to fight for. A name from the darkness. Morning light seeped through the curtains, casting a golden hue on the modest room. Maria hadn't slept, her back ached, her eyes were heavy, but her mind was wide awake, stuck on the man in the dark camise. Was he just a passerby, a thief, or worse, someone from her past? She needed answers. Maria walked straight to Ruxana's office and recounted what she saw. Ruxana's expression turned grim. We'll check the security footage. If anyone's following you, we'll find out. An hour later, Saad arrived and joined them in the surveillance room. The guard rewound the tape. There he was. The man stood across the road, still, head tilted slightly toward the center. He never stepped inside, never spoke, but his body language screamed intent. Maria's pulse raced. Zoom in on his face. The guard tried, but the resolution wasn't sharp enough to identify him clearly. I've seen that posture before. Maria whispered. Years ago. Saad watched her carefully. Who do you think it is? She clenched her fists. Samir, her cousin from her mother's side. The one her parents tried to force her to marry before she met Zaid. He had been possessive, controlling even as a suitor. He followed her to school, threatened any guy who spoke to her, and once broke Zaid's motorcycle when he saw them talking. Maria's refusal to marry him had caused a family scandal. Her parents had disowned her, and Samir had vowed, one day, you'll come crawling back, and I'll be the one who decides your fate. She had forgotten that threat, or maybe buried it, but now it echoed again, like a curse reborn. Maria sat silently under the nim tree with Saad, the children playing in the distance. If it's him, she said slowly, he won't stop. He never accepted defeat. Saad's jaw tightened. Then he picked the wrong person to stalk. And the wrong mother to threaten. Maria turned to him. I need to tell the police. Make a report. Even if it goes nowhere, it has to be on record. Saad nodded. I'll go with you? At the police station, Maria filed a formal complaint, describing Samir's past behavior and the recent sighting. The officer took notes but didn't seem too concerned. Unless he threatens you directly or steps on the property, there's little we can do, he said, shrugging. Maria left feeling deflated, but Saad placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Let them doubt you. We'll still act. That evening, Saad hired 2 additional security guards for night duty and had solar-powered lights installed around the perimeter. He won't come close without being seen, he promised, but the fear inside Maria still stirred restlessly. Days passed, no sign of Samir, no letters, no sightings. Maria tried to return to her routine, helping in the sewing room, managing online orders, laughing with her kids, but something had changed. She was always scanning the streets, always expecting the worst. One night, as she closed the sewing room late, she noticed the back gate was ajar. Her breath caught. She stepped outside, cautiously, and there, scribbled on the wall with charcoal, were the words, "You think he loved you. You were always mine." Maria's knees buckled. Samir had been here, inside the center. She called out, and within seconds, Saad and the guards rushed to her. She pointed at the wall, barely able to speak. Ruxana arrived too. How did he get in? One of the side walls has no fencing, a guard admitted. Saad's eyes blazed. Get it fixed by morning. Add barbed wire. No excuses. Maria trembled. He's inside my life again. He knows where I sleep. You're not alone, Saad said firmly. He's trying to break your spirit, not your body. Don't let him win. But what if he hurts the kids? She whispered. We'll move you. The next day Saad offered a solution. My family has an old farmhouse about 20 kilometers from here. It's rarely used. Quiet, surrounded by tall trees. I'll take you and the children there for a while just until we catch him, or at least stop him. Maria hesitated. It's too much. You've done enough. I'm not asking as a stranger, Maria. I'm asking as someone who cares about you. She looked at her children, then at the center that had become her second home but was now no longer safe. Finally, she nodded. Okay, we'll go. That night, she packed the essentials: clothes, medicines, documents, and a few of the children's favorite toys. Layla clutched her bunny, looking confused. Where are we going, Amy? Somewhere peaceful, Beta Maria whispered. Where no one can find us. As Saad's car pulled away from the center under the moonlight, Maria stared out the window, wondering if she was finally leaving her nightmares behind or stepping into a new one. A place to begin. Again, the farmhouse stood at the edge of a quiet valley, hidden behind tall eucalyptus trees and surrounded by fields that danced in the wind. It was nothing grand, just a two-bedroom cottage with whitewashed walls and wooden shutters, but, to Maria, it felt like something sacred. Safety. It was the first time in months she could breathe without looking over her shoulder. Saad had arranged everything: a cook who came by daily, groceries, toys for the kids, and even a sewing kit for Maria. Just in case your hands get restless. He had smiled. The first night, Maria stood by the window and watched her children sleep in peace, for once not tangled in fear. The moonlight streamed in, touching their faces like a blessing. She whispered a prayer she hadn't dared say aloud in a long time. Thank you, for this peace, for this kindness, for the stranger who became our shelter. The days flowed gently. Ion discovered a patch of wildflowers and pretended it was a secret forest. Layla chased butterflies and named them after cartoon characters. Maria cooked, sewed, laughed, and slowly, she started to live again. Each evening, Saad visited. Sometimes with fruit, sometimes with stories, and sometimes with just silent companionship. They'd sit on the porch, watching the sun disappear behind the trees, letting the silence say what words could not. One evening, Maria turned to him. You saved us, Saad. I want you to know that I don't take it lightly. He smiled gently. You saved yourself. I just opened a door. She shook her head. No, you kept it open, even when I was too afraid to walk through. Their eyes met, and this time, neither of them looked away. But not all shadows fade. Quietly, a week after they arrived, a local police officer visited the farmhouse. He handed Saad a file. Your complaint against the man named Samir. He's been arrested. He was caught trying to break into the women's center again, late at night. Maria's breath caught. Is anyone hurt? No. The new fencing worked. He couldn't get through, but he had a knife. If he had gotten in. The words hung heavy. Will he stay locked up? Saad asked. For now, yes. You may have to testify later, madam, the officer said to Maria, but the judge saw his past record and the threats. It won't be hard to keep him behind bars for a long time. After the officer left, Maria sat in stunned silence. It's over, Saad said gently. No, she whispered, it's just beginning. The next day, she sat with the children on the porch. Ion drew pictures of his jungle, while Layla colored a big sun and two hearts beside it. Who's this one for? Maria asked, pointing to one heart. Me. Layla grinned, and the other one's you. Maria smiled. And where's Saad's? Layla paused, then quickly drew a third heart, bigger than the others. Maria's heart fluttered. That evening, when Saad arrived, Maria greeted him at the gate. There's something I want to ask you, she said, eyes searching his. Anything, he said. She took a breath. What happens after the storm ends? What if? I don't want to go back to the center. You don't have to, he replied softly. You can build a life here. Or anywhere you want. With you. Saad's eyes softened. Only if you want me to stay. She nodded, and for the first time since Zaid's death, she didn't feel guilty for smiling. I want to live, she said. Not just survive. And maybe love again. Saad took her hand. Then let's begin. Together. Epilogue. 6 months later, the farmhouse had changed. A small garden bloomed near the porch. A new room was being added for Layla, and inside, laughter echoed often. Maria had started a new branch of the sewing program right from the farmhouse, training nearby women who had no access to city centers. Orders flowed in steadily from her online shop. She'd also spoken bravely at a women's rights conference, sharing her story. Her voice had trembled, but never wavered. Saad stood beside her that day, proud and quiet. They never rushed anything. There was no proposal, no dramatic declarations. But every day, they chose each other gently, and without fear. And that, Maria realized, was what real love looked like. A place to begin again. The farmhouse stood at the edge of a quiet valley, hidden behind tall eucalyptus trees and surrounded by fields that danced in the wind. It was nothing grand, just a two-bedroom cottage with whitewashed walls and wooden shutters, but to Maria, it felt like something sacred. Safety. It was the first time in months she could breathe without looking over her shoulder. Saad had arranged everything: a cook who came by daily, groceries, toys for the kids, and even a sewing kit for Maria, just in case your hands get restless. He had smiled. The first night, Maria stood by the window and watched her children sleep in peace, for once not tangled in fear. The moonlight streamed in, touching their faces like a blessing. She whispered a prayer she hadn't dared say aloud in a long time. Thank you, for this peace, for this kindness, for the stranger who became our shelter. The days flowed gently. Ayan discovered a patch of wildflowers and pretended it was a secret forest. Layla chased butterflies and named them after cartoon characters. Maria cooked, sewed, laughed, and slowly, she started to live again. Each evening, Saad visited. Sometimes with fruit, sometimes with stories, and sometimes with just silent companionship. They'd sit on the porch, watching the sun disappear behind the trees, letting the silence say what words could not. One evening, Maria turned to him. You saved us, Saad. I want you to know that I don't take it lightly. He smiled gently. You saved yourself. I just opened a door. She shook her head. No, you kept it open, even when I was too afraid to walk through. Their eyes met, and this time, neither of them looked away. But not all shadows fade. Quietly, a week after they arrived, a local police officer visited the farmhouse. He handed Saad a file. Your complaint against the man named Samir. He's been arrested. He was caught trying to break into the women's center again, late at night. Maria's breath caught. Is anyone hurt? No. The new fencing worked. He couldn't get through, but he had a knife. If he had gotten in, the words hung heavy. Will he stay locked up? Saad asked. For now, yes. You may have to testify later, madam, the officer said to Maria, but the judge saw his past record and the threats. It won't be hard to keep him behind bars for a long time. After the officer left, Maria sat in stunned silence. It's over, Saad said gently. No, she whispered, it's just beginning. The next day, she sat with the children on the porch. Ayan drew pictures of his jungle, while Layla colored a big sun and two hearts beside it. Who's this one for? Maria asked, pointing to one heart. Me. Layla grinned, and the other one's you. Maria smiled. And where's Saad's? Layla paused, then quickly drew a third heart, bigger than the others. Maria's heart fluttered. That evening, when Saad arrived, Maria greeted him at the gate. There's something I want to ask you, she said, eyes searching his. Anything, he said. She took a breath. What happens after the storm ends? What if? I don't want to go back to the center. You don't have to, he replied softly. You can build a life here. Or anywhere you want. With you. Saad's eyes softened. Only if you want me to stay. She nodded, and for the first time since Zaid's death, she didn't feel guilty for smiling. I want to live, she said. Not just survive. And maybe love again. Saad took her hand. Then let's begin. Together. Epilogue. 6 months later, the farmhouse had changed. A small garden bloomed near the porch. A new room was being added for Layla, and inside, laughter echoed often. Maria had started a new branch of the sewing program right from the farmhouse, training nearby women who had no access to city centers. Orders flowed in steadily from her online shop. She'd also spoken bravely at a women's rights conference, sharing her story. Her voice had trembled but never wavered. Saad stood beside her that day, proud and quiet. They never rushed anything. There was no proposal, no dramatic declarations, but every day, they chose each other gently, and without fear. And that, Maria realized, was what real love looked like.